The grocery store hums with a sound we have been trained to ignore. It is the low, vibrating drone of industrial compressors, a mechanical heartbeat that keeps a global supply chain on life support. Within those aisles, the crispness of a head of lettuce is a fragile illusion, sustained by thousands of miles of refrigerated trucking and a constant, expensive stream of electricity. But when the grid falters, or the price of a kilowatt-hour climbs, that illusion vanishes. For the modern homesteader, true independence does not begin with a solar panel or a battery bank. It begins in the dark, quiet earth beneath our feet. We are moving away from the fragile hum of the machine and toward the silent, steady pull of physics. This is not a step backward into the dark ages. It is a calculated leap into a more resilient future. We are building the passive fridge. The air in a standard kitchen refrigerator is a desert. It is stripped of moisture by cooling coils, leaving your carrots limp and your greens withered within days. To find a better way, we look to the deep, damp silence of the ground. Reach down and press your palm against a patch of bare soil in the shade. It feels heavy, cool, and ancient. This is thermal mass. The Earth acts as a massive thermal battery, absorbing the searing heat of a July afternoon and the bone-chilling frost of a January night, averaging them out into a steady, reliable 55 degrees Fahrenheit. In the high deserts of the Rockies or the rolling hills of the Midwest, this temperature is the gold standard for preservation. It is the point where life slows down but does not stop. Our first system relies on the simplest of tools: a sharpened spade, a sturdy wheelbarrow, and the sweat of a single afternoon. We call it the Zier pot, but in the yard, it is simply the pot-in-pot cooler. You start with 2 unglazed terracotta pots, one small enough to nest inside the larger one with a 2-inch gap between their walls. These are not the plastic imitations found in big box stores. These are heavy, porous vessels made of fired clay, smelling of minerals and old rain. You fill that 2-inch gap with clean, coarse sand, the kind that feels gritty between your fingers and holds water without turning into muck. The science here is as old as the Nile. You pour a half-gallon of cool water onto the sand until it is saturated. As the dry wind of the plains or the heat of a Zone 5 summer hits the outer pot, the water begins to evaporate. This process pulls heat away from the inner chamber, dropping the internal temperature by 20 or even 30 degrees compared to the outside air. Inside the smaller pot, we place a damp burlap sack. Underneath that sack, a dozen eggs, a block of hard cheese wrapped in wax paper, and 3 heads of garden fresh kale remain crisp and cool. There is no cord, no motor, and no monthly bill. Just the sound of water evaporating and the smell of damp earth. But for the family looking to store a full autumn harvest, we must go deeper. We move from the scale of a ceramic pot to the scale of the earth itself. This is the earth-sheltered storage box, a bridge between a cooler and a full-scale root cellar. It begins with a hole, dug 4 feet deep into a well-drained section of the property. The soil here is different than the surface. It is packed tight, cool to the touch, and filled with the scent of dormant roots and decaying organic matter. We line this pit with heavy, rough-sawn cedar boards, 2 inches thick. Cedar is the wood of choice here because it resists the rot and fungi that thrive in the dark. It carries a sharp, resinous scent that acts as a natural deterrent to the small rodents that might try to claim your harvest as their own. To provide the necessary thermal mass, we do not rely on the wood alone. We source 40 heavy concrete blocks, each weighing about 35 pounds. These are stacked inside the wooden frame, creating a dense gray inner wall that stores the coolth of the night. On top of this structure sits a lid made of 2 layers of 3/4-inch marine-grade plywood, sandwiched around a 3-inch layer of rock wool insulation. This lid is heavy, requiring a stout handle and a deliberate effort to lift, but it is the gatekeeper of your food's longevity. Inside this subterranean vault, the environment is transformed. We introduce 3 5-gallon buckets filled with damp, sterilized river sand. This is where we bury the gold of the homestead, the carrots, the beets, and the parsnips. When you pull a carrot out of this sand in late February, it does not look like the rubbery, plastic-wrapped stalks from the store. It is firm, cold, and covered in a fine layer of grit that washes away to reveal a vibrant, deep orange. The greens are still attached, though trimmed, smelling of the garden as it was 4 months ago. The air inside the box is managed through 2 simple 2-inch PVC pipes. One intake pipe draws cool air from the base of a nearby north-facing stone wall, while the exhaust pipe rises 3 feet above the lid, capped with a fine mesh screen to keep out the midges and flies. This creates a passive siphon. As the sun warms the exhaust pipe, the air inside rises, pulling fresh, cool air down into the storage chamber. It is a slow, rhythmic breathing of the earth. In this space, we are managing more than just temperature. We are managing ethylene gas. As apples ripen, they give off this gas, which tells every other vegetable in the box to sprout and rot. To counter this, we partition the box with a simple sheet of heavy-duty canvas, treated with beeswax. On one side, the potatoes and onions rest in the dark, their skins becoming papery and tough, protecting the starchy heart within. On the other, the apples and pears are cradled in crates made of thin poplar slats. The smell is intoxicating, a mix of sweet fruit, cedar wood, and the deep ozonic scent of the subterranean world. Every morning, you walk out to the yard. The grass is silvered with a heavy dew that soaks through the leather of your work boots. You lift the heavy, insulated lid of the earth box. The rush of air that hits your face is not the chemical, filtered chill of an appliance. It is the living, breathing cold of the planet. You reach into the sand, your fingers finding the cold, firm shoulder of a rutabaga. It feels substantial, weighing nearly 2 pounds, its skin a mottled purple and cream. This is the true meaning of sovereign living. You are no longer a consumer waiting for a delivery. You are a steward of the seasons, using gravity, evaporation, and the crushing weight of the soil to provide for your own. The hum of the grocery store is gone, replaced by the quiet, heavy click of the lid closing, sealing in the cold for another day. The small-scale storage box serves the daily needs of a kitchen, but for the homesteader looking to bypass the grocery store for an entire winter, we must scale our ambitions to the hillside cold room. This is the third system, a masterpiece of passive engineering that utilizes the sheer weight of a hillside to maintain a climate that defies the scorching sun of a Kansas August or the sub-zero winds of a Montana January. We start by identifying a north-facing slope, a place where the sun rarely touches the ground directly. Here, the shadows linger, and the moss grows thick and velvet green on the bark of the trees. We dig deep into the face of the hill, moving tons of yellow clay and fractured limestone until we have a cavity 8 feet deep and 6 feet wide. This is back-breaking work, the kind that blisters the palms and makes the shoulders ache. But every shovel of dirt removed is a deposit into a bank of thermal stability. The floor is not poured concrete. Instead, we lay down a 6-inch bed of washed river stone, each pebble smooth and cold, roughly the size of a hen's egg. This floor allows the natural moisture of the earth to rise, maintaining a relative humidity of 85%, the perfect environment to keep a cabbage head from turning into a ball of dry parchment. The walls are built from 8-inch thick cinder blocks, their hollow cores filled not with insulation, but with local sand and gravel. We want these walls to be heavy. We want them to have the thermal inertia of a mountain. Once the blocks are set, we coat the exterior in a thick black layer of asphalt emulsion to keep the groundwater from seeping through the pores of the masonry. Against this waterproofing, we lean 2-inch thick sheets of rigid foam board, protecting our thermal battery from the fluctuating temperatures of the upper soil layers. The ceiling of this cold room is where the real magic happens. We use heavy 4x6 pressure-treated timbers to span the gap, spaced 12 inches apart. On top of these, we lay galvanized steel decking, followed by a foot of straw bales, and finally, 3 feet of the original soil we excavated. By the time we are done, the hill has reclaimed the structure. From the outside, all that is visible is a stout wooden door and 2 vent pipes. The door is a beast of a thing, built from 2 layers of 2x6 tongue and groove pine, with a heavy rubber gasket salvaged from an old walk-in cooler. When it swings shut, it makes a solid, muffled thud that signals a total break from the outside world. Inside this mountain room, we implement the cold air siphon. This is a 4-inch diameter pipe that runs from the base of the hill 20 feet away and enters the room at the very bottom of the back wall. Because cold air is denser and heavier than warm air, it flows down the pipe like water, pooling on the stone floor of the cellar. A second pipe, the exhaust, exits through the ceiling and terminates 5 feet above the ground outside. On a clear, freezing night in October, you open both vents. The heavy, freezing air of the night pours into the room, chilling the sand-filled blocks and the stone floor until the entire room is a block of ice-cold mass. In the morning, you close the vents, locking that cold inside. Even if the temperature outside climbs to 90 degrees, the interior of your hillside fridge will not budge more than a single degree. We organize this space with the precision of an armory. To the left, we build heavy slatted shelving from rough-cut larch wood. Larch is a dense, oily timber that laughs at moisture. On these shelves, we place dozens of wide-mouthed glass jars. These are filled with lacto-fermented pickles, their brine cloudy and rich with probiotics, and sauerkraut that smells of caraway seeds and salt. Next to them are the heavy hitters, 55-gallon food-grade blue drums. We don't fill these with water, but with layers of dry sawdust and crisp late-season apples like the Arkansas Black or the Northern Spy. The sawdust cushions the fruit and absorbs any excess moisture, keeping the apples firm enough to snap when you bite into them in mid-April. On the right side of the room, we hang the cured meats. Here, the air is slightly drier due to the proximity of the exhaust vent. We have hams that have been rubbed with brown sugar and coarse sea salt, weighing 20 pounds apiece, hanging from forged iron hooks. They have a deep mahogany color and a scent that is smoky, earthy, and intensely savory. Beside them hang links of summer sausage, their casings tight and speckled with black peppercorns. This is protein that requires no freezer, no generator, and no prayer that the power stays on during a summer thunderstorm. The synergy of these systems creates a tiered defense against spoilage. The pot and pot cooler sits on the porch for the daily herbs and butter. The earth-sheltered box in the backyard holds the bulk of the root vegetables. And the hillside cold room acts as the long-term vault for the fruits, the ferments, and the meats. Together, they represent a complete decoupling from the fragile, humming infrastructure of the modern world. You're no longer living at the mercy of a utility company. You're living by the laws of thermodynamics. The implementation of these systems changes the rhythm of your life. In the late summer, there's a frantic energy to the harvest, a rush to get the produce into the ground before the first hard frost. But once the door to the cold room is closed, a profound peace settles over the homestead. You find yourself walking out to the hillside in the dead of winter, the snow crunching under your boots and the stars bright and cold above the ridge. You pull open that heavy pine door, and the smell that greets you is the smell of victory. It is the scent of a year's worth of labor, held in a state of perfect, silent, suspended animation. You reach for a jar of peaches, preserved in a light syrup of honey and water. The jar is cold, slick with a bit of condensation, and the fruit inside is the color of a summer sunset. As you walk back to the house, the wind howling across the yard, you realize that the humming compressors of the city are a world away. You have built a bridge between the seasons. You have mastered the art of the harvest. This is the quiet, heavy reality of the passive fridge. It is the foundation of a life lived with intention, a life where security is not something you buy, but something you build with your own two hands. This is not just cold storage. This is the architecture of sovereignty.